Following the bombing of Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt ordered the internment of 120,000 Japanese citizens in camps to prevent alleged espionage. After nearly 4 years of confinement, they were released and compensated with $25. On the cold morning of December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy attacked the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor, bringing the country into full force during World War II, a conflict from which it had remained neutral until then, both in the Pacific and in Europe. Following the attack, everything related to Japan profoundly impacted American society. Fearing that a kind of fifth column might operate within the heart of the United States, or simply due to racial prejudice, all Japanese American citizens were arrested and deported to internment camps across the western United States between 1942 and 1948. National security. On December 8, 1941, the day after the attack, and coinciding with the declaration of hostilities by then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the authorities enacted the first measures against Japanese citizens. A presidential edict was issued that segregated citizens of Japanese, German, or Italian descent from the rest of the native population. The president's words left no room for doubt. All citizens, residents, or subjects of Japan, Germany, and Italy, over the age of 14, who are in the United States and do not possess nationality, may be seized, detained, imprisoned, or removed as enemy aliens. This directive unleashed a torrent of racial hatred that affected a citizenry deeply shaken by the Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor naval base. An example of this is the statement by Idaho Governor Chase Clark: "The Japs live like rats, breed like rats, and act like rats. We don't want them here." All citizens, residents, or subjects of Japan, Germany, and Italy over the age of 14 who are in the United States and do not possess citizenship may be arrested, detained, imprisoned, or expelled as enemy aliens. These displays of hatred were compounded by symbolic acts such as the removal of Japanese-made products and the felling of 3,000 cherry trees that the citizens of Tokyo had donated to Washington, D.C., in 1912. All these xenophobic measures took effect in early 1942 in California, Arizona, Oregon, Western Washington, and Alaska. Members of the federal police and the U.S. Army forced all Japanese citizens, men, women, and children to register according to racially segregated criteria. During the first few days, 91,858 names were recorded, eventually reaching over 110,000. Although the 14th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits discriminatory treatment based on race or national origin, the authorities disregarded this provision at the time, citing reasons of national security. Order 9066. On February 12, 1942, the United States government approved Executive Order 9066, which mandated the deportation of all Japanese immigrants and their first-generation North American descendants to internment camps divided into 3 categories: assembly camps under the responsibility of the U.S. military, where prisoners would be temporarily held before being transferred to another location; relocation camps under the control of the War Relocation Authority, where deportees would live; and detention centers under the direction of the Immigration Service, which would house non-naturalized Japanese, including some Germans and Italians. Surprisingly, this order only affected residents of California, Arizona, Oregon, Western Washington, and Alaska, but not those in other states such as the Hawaiian Islands. The Japanese community was the economic engine of the region, and detaining this group would have crippled the financial machinery of the entire archipelago. Order 9066 only affected residents of California, Arizona, Oregon, West Washington, and Alaska, but not those of other states such as the Hawaiian Islands. There were a total of 10 Japanese-American resettlement camps: Manzanar, Tule Lake, Poston, Gila River, Topaz, Minidoka, Grenada, Hart Mountain, Rower, and Jerome. Prisoners considered potentially dangerous were transferred to other camps located in Arizona and Moab, Utah. A week before their detention, these individuals were given time to dispose of their belongings or sell their furniture, homes, and possessions, with the exception of their bank accounts, which were frozen. After this period, the federal police or the Army military police conducted raids on these citizens, confiscating any weapons they might possess. On one occasion, an arsenal of 2,592 pistols and rifles was seized before the deportees departed for the American West. Approximately 113,605 Japanese citizens were deported during the Pacific War. The photos of shame. Manzanar is one of the most notorious camps. Unlike others built on swampy terrain, this one was located on a barren plain on the eastern slopes of California's Sierra Nevada. Its location made it a terribly harsh place. With extreme temperatures year-round, the thermometer rarely rose above freezing in winter and rarely dipped below 50 degrees Celsius in summer. The wind blew so fiercely in the camp that the inmates often woke up covered from head to toe in a fine layer of dust. Half of the population interned there were women, a quarter were school-aged children, and there were also infants and elderly people who could barely care for themselves. Families of 4 were allowed to live in a space measuring 6.1 x 7.6 meters, and they slept on army steel cots on straw sacks. Although the inmates had access to electricity, laundry facilities, and rooms for religious services, the showers and toilets were communal. The inmates slept on army steel cots on straw sacks. Although they had electricity, laundries, and rooms for religious worship, the showers and toilets were communal. Jean Wakatsuki Houston, a woman who lived in the Manzanar camp as a child, recounts that professionally skilled inmates found work in the camps, though they earned a fraction of the wages of a white civilian employed by the WRA, the Wartime Relocation Agency. Inmates were permitted to work outside the camp, primarily as agricultural laborers. Some worked under armed guard, while others had a degree of autonomy. However, all were required to carry identification cards that identified them as camp prisoners. A professional photographer named Toyo Miyake secretly documented Manzanar by smuggling a lens and mount inside the camp and later, with the help of a carpenter, constructing the rest of the camera. Miyake was discovered and his camera confiscated, but the camp director allowed him to continue taking photographs. Thanks to this, the photographer was able to take approximately 1,500 snapshots, documenting life in the camp during his more than 3 years of confinement. Family breakdown. Shoot anyone who tries to escape. That was the order soldiers received when they encountered incidents in the camps due to the appalling living conditions. There, tension, suspicion, and despair were the norm. The most serious incident was the riot at the Manzanar camp, where American troops opened fire on the inmates, killing 135 people. Despite this, as the war progressed, the government allowed some of the inmates to enlist in the army after signing a loyalty pledge. At the Manzanar camp, 174 men enlisted. The most serious incident to occur in a camp was the riot that took place in Manzanar, where American troops opened fire on the inmates, killing 135 people. At the end of World War II, on September 2, 1945, when the internees were released, all that remained were broken families, some forever torn apart, and economic ruin due to the loss of numerous businesses and land. This was the price these people had to pay for their 3 years of confinement. As compensation for their losses, the authorities gave the prisoners only $25 and a train ticket. Many were unable to resume their former lives, without means of subsistence and without employment. They had to live in shelters, hostels, or public housing in cities far from their homes, where they continued to face racist attitudes for years. It wasn't until 1988, under the presidency of Ronald Reagan, that the White House issued an official statement of apology to Japanese Americans. In light of what happened in the 1940s, some personalities such as George Takei, the Japanese-American actor who played Lieutenant Sulu in the legendary 1960s science fiction series Star Trek, or the Japanese-American National Museum itself, denounced through a press release the current situation of many families on the border with Mexico, forcibly separated in an action that is all too reminiscent of what happened in the United States decades ago.